Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, Welcome. So, this coffee hour is being recorded for those who couldn't be here and for those who are here and would like to review anything that we covered today. Um, you will be able to find this and all of our coffee hours, along with recordings of workshops, certification help, newsletter previews, and a great deal more on our YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for Sustainable CT and you'll find us there. And we also will be putting the link in the chat as well. Um, you'll also find a direct link to our YouTube channel and our monthly newsletter, Actions and Impact. A link to all of our newsletters is going in the chat as well. So since you've registered for this coffee hour, you probably already do receive our newsletter, but if not, please do check it out. We try and keep it fun and informative. You can easily subscribe at sustainablecT.org by clicking the sign up button at the very bottom of the page. Um, while you're on our website, be sure to check out this month's episode of The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. New episodes are available on the 15th of each month on our website, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. This month, we have a great conversation with Lori Brown, Executive Director of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. Lori and the League of Conservation Voters work to protect our state's environment by making environmental issues a priority for our elected leaders and holding lawmakers accountable with an environmental scorecard. They push for important legislation that shapes our state's policies on air, water, land, wildlife, energy, and climate change. Listen to the podcast and hear what the League's priorities are for this legislative session. And Happy Earth Day soon, everyone. As we like to say, every day is Earth Day, and so is April 22nd. Our April newsletter includes a big list of Earth Day events being held by many of our registered and certified towns, so hopefully you can find an event near you. Celebrate, take action, support sustainability on Earth Day and every day. So today, for today's coffee hour, we will be talking about the Sustainable CT Community Match Fund, an overview of this program, and then we have two amazing guest speakers to talk about the impactful projects that they have held with the Community Match Fund. We have Emma Kay, who will be speaking about Fairfield Public Schools composting, and Betty Reese from the Ellington Farmers Market. First, I will get into an overview of the Community Match Fund, and then we will hear from them, which is very exciting. So I'll start my presentation now. All right. Amazing. So yes, Community Match Fund update and overview. Perfect. Next slide. So this is just, again, a quick overview of our webinar today. I'll be getting into an overview of the Community Match Fund. I'll be highlighting along the way some of the updates that were made in 2025 for those who may be unfamiliar. There weren't too many of them, so I'll just kind of be shouting them out as they come along naturally as we talk about the Community Match Fund. And then we will be discussing our very exciting new environmental fund funding pool. We will then transition to guest speakers. If you have any questions throughout the presentations, please save them until the end. I promise we'll have time for questions, or if you just have them along the way and you don't want to forget them, just drop them in the chat and I'll read them out at the end for you. So let's dive in. Next slide. So what is the Community Match Fund? The Community Match Fund is our unique crowdfunding grant matching program at Sustainable CT. To back up a bit, the Community Match Fund was created in 2019 with the vision of supporting community-driven initiatives. Through Sustainable CT's programming, we have a voluntary municipal certification program where communities can achieve different tiers of certification through completing actions on our action roadmap. So the intention behind the creation of the Community Match Fund was to put dollars back into communities to help fund these sustainability initiatives or actions that we were looking to see. So the Community Match Fund was designed with grassroots groups in mind, resulting in a low barrier program that is unlike traditional funding programs. When I say unlike traditional funding programs, I mean, for example, we have no traditional grant applications, no deadlines, no lengthy review period, and minimal reporting requirements, making the Community Match Fund fast, flexible, and accessible. Um, Through the Community Match Fund, we could match dollar for dollar what project leaders raise up to $6,000 for projects with budgets totaling up to $12,000. As some of you may know, our maximum match changed in the summer of 2025. It previously was 7,500 and is now a maximum of 6,000. This was probably our most notable or biggest change that we made to the match fund this past year. Next slide. So, who can run a community match fund campaign? The short answer, anyone in a registered community. We invite all great ideas that provide public benefits to your community. So individual residents, nonprofits, community groups, municipalities, public schools, libraries, and anyone else in a sustainable CT registered town may propose project ideas and access our matching funds. Next slide. All right, moving on to eligibility criteria. Looking at this slide now, although it does look a bit wordy, I promise we do try and keep this as simple as possible. So, to be eligible through the Community Match Fund, projects must meet the requirements listed here. First, as I mentioned before, they must be located in a sustainable CT registered community. Currently, 140 out of the 169 municipalities in Connecticut are registered with Sustainable CT, which is great. Second, the project must align with our action roadmap. So, our action roadmap can be described as essentially a list of sustainability best practices or initiatives for towns to complete. The action roadmap has 12 action categories ranging from thriving local economies to renewable and efficient energy infrastructure to well-stewarded land and natural resources to strategic materials management to complete streets, just to name a few. So, as you can see, we think of sustainability very broadly. So, typically, sustainability initiatives or project ideas do align with our action roadmap in some way. Then the project should have a free and public benefit and should be publicly accessible. So, in other words, it shouldn't cost community residents anything to attend or use, and it should be on property or in an area that is publicly accessible to the community. Uh, Moving on to some of our other eligibility criteria. So these are changes that are new as of 2025. So nonprofits with annual budgets that exceed $300,000 are not eligible to run projects. Non-municipal entities, so individuals, nonprofits, community groups, can only run one project per calendar year. And then repeat event-based projects are only eligible for up to 2 years of funding through the Community Match Fund. And then Listed below here are a list of eligible project areas to give you all an idea of our scope and things that may be eligible for funding if you're unfamiliar with our action roadmap and you're thinking what aligns with the action roadmap and the community match fund. These are some potential project areas, so land and water body conservation, improving walkability, energy efficiency and renewables, food waste diversion, community gardens, green infrastructure, environmental justice, creating green spaces, composting, farmers markets, improve public transportation, environmental and climate programs and education, activating public spaces, arts and culture, healthy and sustainable food networks. And we can move on to the next slide. All right, our process. What does this look like? It can be put into 6 simple steps. Honestly, the first step is really to have a project idea, I guess. But once you do that, you could begin the process by sending us an email to funding@sustainablect.org. Once you reach out, we will set up an initial intake meeting where we will discuss your project idea and go over the whole community match fund process and crowdfunding process. As I mentioned, we have no formal application process, so we do try and keep everything as simple and accessible as possible. What we look for from project leaders to send over as the application is an estimated budget, a project timeline, and a brief project summary. After meeting, we confirm internally that your project idea and budget just align with all the eligibility requirements I just mentioned, and then that the project is in alignment with our program. So next, the exciting part, you run your crowdfunding campaign. Can we actually just skip to the next slide for this? Which brings me to Patronicity. So Patronicity is the platform that we partner with where you will physically run your crowdfunding campaign. For anyone that's unfamiliar with Patronicity, it looks like this. I've attached example photos here of 2 campaign pages, but as you can see, it's very similar in looks and in concept to GoFundMe, if you're familiar with GoFundMe, but it's for communities. So you can see here, this is exactly what a campaign page looks like. You have your crowdfunding goal, a bar that shows where you're at with your donations, how many folks have donated to your campaign. Then you have a whole page dedicated with pictures and an explanation of what your project is, along with a budget, so that donors can see like exactly where their dollars are going. So once we've confirmed your project is eligible, we connect you with a crowdfunding coach at Patronicity to help you build your crowdfunding page. So your crowdfunding coach is an expert and they're there as a resource for project leaders. So even if crowdfunding feels a little bit daunting or it's something that you've never done before, they will be there as a resource to provide crowdfunding strategies, information, and support you throughout the process. Our crowdfunding campaigns on Patronicity last for 30 to 60 days, and I typically recommend utilizing the full 60 days just to maximize donors. This is kind of a sweet spot. It gives people enough time to hear about your campaign, make a donation, and then pass along the information to other interested folks. And then if we could go back to the previous slide, we'll go over the next couple parts in the process. So once you've completed your 30 to 60 day crowdfunding campaign, you'll receive your crowdfunding dollars plus our matching grant all in a lump sum through Patronicity after the closeout process is complete. And then you will go on to implement your very exciting project, and this should be within a year of receiving the funds. So then, once your project is completed, the last step is reporting. We have no formal grant reporting. It's pretty minimal. We require that you fill out a couple surveys and then post updates and photos to your campaign page once your project has been implemented, so that your donors can see how the project came to life. And this kind of closes the loop with your donors in a nice way. Let's go to the next slide. One more. Awesome. All right, the impact. So, taking a look at the impact of the Community Match Fund, you can see that this program has been impactful all across the state. So, the map on the right-hand side here shows all 88 communities that have held Community Match Fund projects. In total, to date, we've had 392 projects across the state, and not including the incredible projects that we have live currently. All time, $2,329,804 has been granted through Sustainable CT, and $2,601,139 has been crowdfunded by community donors for a total investment of $4,930,943 over time. So this is getting very close to that exciting 5 million number. Since 2019, there have been 145 projects held in distressed communities for a total investment of $1,810,136. So overall, very impactful numbers, as you can see here. Let's go to the next slide. Perfect. So now, what do we fund? I know we've talked a lot about our process, what the Community Match Fund is, what's eligible, but just to give some real tangible examples of some projects that we've had, we're going to take a look at a few of our 2025 Community Match Fund projects, just to give, again, an example of our scoped impact and hopefully inspire a couple of you on this call. So first, we're featuring the Eastern Connecticut Community Gardens Association 2026 Giving Garden Internship. Through this campaign, the Craig Floyd Giving Garden received a total of $12,315 to hire a high school age intern for the garden in 2026. So volunteer and intern help is critical to their ability to plant, grow, and harvest produce, and then high school interns gain valuable experience for their future careers. Vegetables, fruit, and herbs grown at the Giving Garden go to families in need in southeastern Connecticut. Let's go to the next project. Awesome. Next is the Trees for Suffield Initiative 2025. So designed by landscape architects with input from the DOT, CT Scenic Road Advisory, Eversource, and the town of Suffield. A 10-year planting plan was created to provide a strategy for replenishing and enhancing Suffield's tree canopy. The plan promotes a healthy diversity and more native species in Suffield. So this is where we came in through this campaign. Trees for Suffield received a total of $12,178 in total to purchase trees to further their goals, the goals of their planting plan, and enhance their tree canopy. Go to the next project. So 10 more years expanding BSBC's giveaway program. So for 10 years, the Bradley Street Bicycle Co-op in New Haven has donated over 2,000 bikes to New Haven residents in need of reliable transportation. So in 2025, they ran a community match fund campaign and received $15,176 through the community match fund to expand their giveaway program and give away over 60 bikes to community residents. Next. And then through Everybody Deserves Accessibility at Rock House, the Youth Conservation Corps is partnered with the town of Oxford's Conservation Commission to continue their mission of increasing accessibility to Rock House's trail system. So the trail crew is excited to be developing one of Connecticut's first fully assessed trail systems for everybody. In 2025, they received $12,922 to implement an accessibility assessment on the trails and address the limitations that were identified in the accessibility assessment. And all of these projects are located, all of our past and current projects, I should say, are located on our page on Patronicity if you want to learn more about any of the projects that I just mentioned or see all of our past projects or our current projects. I really encourage you to check it out. If you just look up Sustainable CT Community Match Fund, the page should come right up. Now we can move on to the last slide. Yes. So, yes, I am very excited to touch on the Environmental Fund, which is our amazing new funding pool that was added in the summer of 2025. So this special fund supports projects that relate to environmental sustainability and or address climate change. So a couple of the projects that I just mentioned would align with this fund. Like the Mystic Giving Garden and Trees for Suffield. Or just to throw some examples out, this could include projects related to invasive species removals, pollinator pathways, tree plantings, reducing waste, addressing food waste diversion and composting, food access and community gardens, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing climate resiliency, and more. This is an incredible fund that has the capacity to support really impactful projects, and we're very excited about the future of this fund. And this is the perfect segue into our guest speakers. So both of our guest speakers today led projects and will be talking about projects that align perfectly with our new funding pool. And these projects are just incredible examples of how the Community Match Fund can be utilized to make a lasting impact on your community. So we'll hear more about their projects, the details, and the impact that went into them. So a couple more slides really quickly before we transition into our incredible guest speakers to hear about their amazing projects that are great examples of our environmental fund. We can go to the next slide. So next steps, or maybe the takeaway, just what I want to end off on. I apologize. I know I've been talking for a while now, but really, if you have an idea to make your community a better place, please email funding@sustainablecT.org to start the process. Or if you have any questions or want to learn more about any of the projects that I spoke on today. Next slide. Perfect. And this is just my contact information, our website link, and the funding contact information as well. We'll be putting this in the chat. Also, just so you all have it. So that concludes my presentation. And now we will be moving on to hear first we will hear from Emma Kay from Fairfield, and then we will hear from Betty. I see questions being dropped in the chat. I promise there will be a time for questions at the end. And if you put them in the chat, I will read them. We will get to everyone. So let me just share my screen for Emma's slides, and we will begin. All right, can everyone see my screen? Perfect. All right, take it away.
That one is Betty's, but we can start with Betty if that's easy. It's up to you.
No, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Yep.
Managing a couple slides here. Awesome. I'm not sure why I present isn't coming up. There we go. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, I think it's loading, but my name is Emma Kay. I am the co-VP of Sustainability for the PTA Council of Fairfield, and I'm also the Secretary of Sustainable Fairfield. So I'm here to talk about our cafeteria compost program. You can go to the next slide. So the compost program actually started before our Sustainable CT campaign, matching grant campaign, in 2021, 2022, about the district decided to pilot a compost program in our cafeterias at two of our elementary schools. We have a total of 11. They chose two to pilot a compost program at. And that same year, a third school decided to raise their own money to join into the same program. So in 2022 to 2023, we started composting at three elementary schools. The program was really successful. So in the next summer, the Green Team, which is our sustainability committee of the PTA Council, partnered with Sustainable Fairfield to start the Sustainable CT campaign to expand the program to all 11 elementary schools in Fairfield. It was really successful. We raised more than $60,000, and we were able to start that program in all the elementary schools the next school year from 2022 to 2024. So after it was so successful at all of the elementary schools, our school district decided to expand it as the fifth graders grew, I guess. So they would, the first year they expanded it to sixth graders. Those fifth graders had already learned how to separate their waste in fifth grade. So when they entered sixth grade, they would continue composting. And the idea was that the program would grow with them until it went K through 12. The next year in 2025, the district got a really competitive pricing on the compost hauling. So they decided instead of waiting that they would roll it out at across the town from K to 12. So we are now this year started composting at both of our high schools, excuse me, three middle schools, and all 11 of our elementary schools. You can go to the next slide. So in terms of our crowdfunding campaign, we campaigned weekly at the farmers market where we have a table, and I think we also were at a couple other town events. We sent out email blasts to our personal contacts. We also sent it out through the school district and through the PTAs. And Sustainable Fairfield has its own distribution list. We, of course, did social media posts. And then the final thing we did, which you can go to the next slide, is we made these giving segments that we thought kind of gave a real solid something for people to understand a little bit more about where their money was going. So, for example, these are just a few of them, but on Patronicity, if you gave $100 or more, you were super innovative, and that paid for composting pickup for 1 week at one school. And if obviously you can see, if you went up to 450, it was a whole month. So I think that was a way to make, the contributions tangible for our donors. And I think it encouraged people to participate. You can go to the next slide. So I think obviously the amounts must be different now because we raised more than $25,000, which was matched for a total of $62,500 with the matching grants from Sustainable CT. And that covered the composting for 1 year at 8 of the elementary schools. And we had some extra to purchase materials and signage and some other smaller related programs. I think the key takeaway for us was that the most successful connections were our personal contacts. At this point, I had already, for example, been in the schools helping with the compost program for a year. I'd already spent hours doing it. So it was a real personal push. I was like, we really wanted this to work. And I think that those conversations and connections really we're the most successful in raising money. I also wanted to point out that working with Sustainable CT through this process was really easy. They are really responsive when you have questions. Um, and as Summer mentioned, the paperwork is really not burdensome at all. We found it to be a really smooth process. You can go to the next slide. So, before I talk about kind of the implementation of our compost program, I think I wanted to touch on the fact that the kind of most meaningful outcome of this program we did with Sustainable CT was that the students and the staff and their families have a much higher awareness and understanding of why we separate our waste. Um, I've had so many great conversations with the staff, and they say, "Oh," or parents, and they say, "Oh, we didn't even realize really what was happening to our trash." And now that we're teaching the students in the school and we're teaching the staff and they're taking that home, I think it's really a community-wide impact. The students, a lot of them now ask, why isn't there compost outside of school? And they're bringing that home. And of course, the public schools district saw that and expanded the program and is continuing it on after the matching grant was spent. You can go. Yep. So, in terms of the compost program, a lot of the pre-work for it had to do with the custodians. The custodians in this program take the biggest burden here. So before we started at any of the schools, we would meet with the custodians. We trained them on how and why we are composting. We went into each school and talked specifically at that school, how is it going to work in terms of logistics, silly things like where are your bins going to be and how are you going to get them outside and how often do you need to change out the liners? All that stuff took a lot of time to kind of iron out the details. We then went on to teach the students and the staff. So we held assemblies at the schools. I know at my school, I went into like the classrooms and taught the children about how and why. I had a presentation. We would play a game. Where does this go? Which bin does this go in? And then we had parent volunteers in each school for several months to make sure that the everyone was doing it correctly, that we weren't having any mistakes. And we still have volunteers coming in at the beginning of each school year for the first few weeks to just make sure the kids remember after the summer how to do it. So it is, I would say, we are reliant on our custodians and our volunteers. I know some other districts were able to roll out programs that they really had a lot more staff support. Our staff just doesn't have the time to be, teaching kids about this. So we do rely on our parent volunteers. Can go to the next one. So some of the challenges, especially in the beginning, there was a very small number of haulers, which meant the pricing was not competitive. It was very expensive. We cannot get volunteers at all of our schools. Sometimes we can't find a parent, or sometimes the schools don't want parents in the cafeteria for so long. As I mentioned, the custodians are a really important part of this, and some of them didn't want to change their systems. They would rather just kind of keep doing what they're doing. Other custodians bought in immediately and saw the value. So, I think it was just important to have the custodians give their impact and really make them feel a part of the process. And then finally, a big problem we had this year was that the compostable trays that we purchased for the kids to put their food on were no longer being accepted at the compost facilities, which was a big bummer. There was just not the right ratio. There's a smaller amount of food than there was trays, and so it wasn't working for them to take the trays. So we are throwing them away now and trying to work through that problem and trying to figure out a solution to that. I think I talked about quite a bit of this. The takeaways for us were working with the custodians and the staff, rather than saying, this is what you have to do, we tried to make them a part of the process. The parent support is really important, as well as the staff. I think the most successful schools at this program also have staff who may not be doing as much as the parent volunteers, but they're really invested and they really care about the program. And I think this point that not every school will be the same is important because it is done differently at each school. It's not a one size fits all program. It has to work for what time they're eating lunch and how the custodians work their day works out and when they're able to do stuff and when they're not able to do stuff. So we did have to kind of be flexible. And of course, it's not going to be perfect. We're working with kids. I mean, even at home, I'm sure people make plenty of mistakes separating their trash out. But it's okay if a ketchup packet ends up in the compost once in a while. The overall outcome is important. And as I said, the amount of food waste that we're producing is impressive, and we care about that. But the most important thing is that the students are learning about their waste, and they're thinking about their waste, and they're thinking about how much they're producing and where it should go. And that's the most meaningful result. So these numbers are actually from before this school year. So I think we're well above this at this point, especially having added the high school students in. But obviously, we are recovering a ton of food, and it's a wonderful program. I think there's just one more slide with some pictures of the kids. Yep. So these are some of our stations. You can see in the middle here, that's a custodian with our garbage before and after composting from one day. So yeah, the kids love it. The kids get excited about it, and it's been wonderful. And it was great working with Sustainable CT.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was incredible to hear and learn about, and especially see the impact. I loved all of those photos. And now those are great. And now we're going to move over and hear from Betty Reese from the Ellington Farmers Market. Betty, I am pulling up your slides right now. Let me go ahead and share. We got a sneak preview of this like 10 minutes ago. But yeah, Betty, take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. And Emma, that was really cool to learn about your program. It definitely ties into what we do to some extent. I have a child in public school as well. I'd love to see something like that happen here in Ellington. Um, so my name is Betty Reese. I'm the market manager at the Ellington Farmers Market. And we have a small but mighty community nonprofit that has been quietly doing big things in Tallinn County for over a decade. I want to share a little bit about who we are, what makes us special, and how the work that we're doing fits in with the sustainable CT framework. So, a brief history. We started the way that some of the best things often do, organically. For as long as anyone in town can remember, a relatively small group of farm stands showed up on Saturday mornings at Arbor Park in the center of town to offer their goods for sale. But times began to change. Arlington was and continues to grow, and the market needed to find ways to grow with it. So in 2012, a volunteer slash force of nature, pictured here, named Diane Trube, decided to take that little gathering to the next level. She built it into a real destination. And by 2017, she had established a board of directors and earned the market its 501c3 status. By 2019, we were accepting and doubling SNAP and FMNP benefits, and our Kids Power Produce Club was thriving. I joined as a volunteer in 2020 and became the market's first official employee in 2024, and still the only employee, coinciding with our scramble to find a new location after learning Arbor Park would be closed for maintenance. The move to the newly named Market Park turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as we had the chance to mold our space to fit our needs. And as a very much grassroots organization, we appreciate the Community Match Fund's low barrier approach to project funding. So for the next slide, what makes us special? Every Saturday morning from May through October, 50 plus vendors set up at 72 Maple Street in Ellington. Market Park was converted from an empty space to a thriving market in just over an hour every week. You'll find fresh produce, locally raised protein, plants, baked goods, prepared foods, handcrafted items, and much more. There's free live and often lively music every single week. We had 2 pavilions donated to the space, one for music, one for the market booth that also houses some of our programming. And we have themed market days, several beloved annual events, such as the upcoming opening day, Barnyard Babies on May 2nd, if you're around, Touch a Tractor, Pickle Fest, the Zucchini 500, and many more. All of these moving parts are coordinated and managed by a tiny team of two. It is Diane and I doing all of this lifting in our spare time. Um, but we couldn't do it without the support of many, many incredible community partners, including Sustainable CT. So moving on to the next slide. This program is intended to address, number one, food insecurity in our community. According to ctdatahaven.org, 18% of Northeastern CT residents experienced food insecurity in the past year, and nearly 40% of Connecticut adults are currently struggling financially, which is the highest rate since they began collecting data in the 1990s. But I want to be clear about something. Food insecurity does not look the way many people picture it. It touches working families, seniors on fixed incomes, people facing a health crisis or a job loss or a stretch of bad luck. Some of our most grateful participants are people who don't receive much food assistance, but who cannot afford to treat themselves to something fresh from the farmer's market without a little extra help. We work closely with Ellington Human Services, the Senior Center, and local senior housing to make sure people know that this program exists and how to access it. And we also strive to reach those outside of Ellington with our robust social media and community news and calendar content. You do not have to be an Ellington resident to use the program. And this year, we face an added challenge. We've lost a significant portion of our SNAP doubling funding, which is making our fundraising efforts much more critical. So moving on to the next slide, how it works. Participants start at our market booth, one of those donated pavilions. SNAP recipients tell us how much they'd like to double, up to a threshold determined by our available funding. And we run their EBT card for that amount. We hand them their SNAP vouchers plus matching vouchers, which they can spend at any eligible vendor booth at the market. It is one of the requirements to be a vendor at the market to accept all of our voucher programs, as long as the product is eligible for the program that the person is using. The process for FMNP is similar, but slightly more complex based on the Connecticut Department of Ag requirements. And our Kids Power of Produce Club runs for 12 weeks during the summer school vacation, giving children the chance to choose and purchase their own fresh produce at the market. The program has grown every year since its inception, and we expect the growth to continue. Last year alone, we facilitated over $50,000 in purchases through these programs, every single dollar going directly to local farmers and small businesses right here in Connecticut. And side note, a couple of years ago, we were recognized by the Connecticut General Assembly as being the third highest SNAP and FMNP doubling market in the state, only behind, I want to say it was Bridgeport and another large urban market. So we are pretty proud of that. We work really hard to get the word out about these programs. So moving on to the sustainable angle, what makes the farmer's market a more environmentally sustainable option than a supercenter style grocery store? So when you buy at the farmer's market, you reduce your transportation emissions. Food in the US typically travels 1,500 miles to reach a consumer, which is insane. Conversely, most market vendors live and farm within 20 to 50 miles of the market, sometimes much closer. And this drastically reduces the carbon emissions from transportation. We use minimal packaging. We sell without plastic packaging for the most part. We encourage people to bring their reusable bags, and a lot of our farmers have the pressed cardboard type packaging for the produce. Also, some of our farmers reuse a lot of their packaging for things like eggs and where it's safe to do so. Our farmers typically practice more sustainable farming practices. I know several of our farmers work directly with the Yukon agriculture program to make sure that they're using the most sustainable and sometimes regenerative farming methods available in our region. Though none of our farmers are certified organic because I guess the certification program is a bit daunting. Um, Several, if not all, are use a no spray method, which means that they use the Yukon recommended methods of pest control that are significantly less reliant on chemicals than typical big ag operations. Um, the shopping at the farmers market also keeps the money within the community. We are not sending all of our money to big ag or mega stores, out of state, international corporations. Without people supporting our small family farms, those farms will eventually go away. We see it in Ellington all the time. The farmer gets too old to run the farm, the next generation is not interested in doing so. That farmland is then converted to often developments. And yes, we need housing, but we also need to have farms. We need to keep our local farms here. So this program helps keep our farmers in business. This is the third year of having the privilege of working with Sustainable CT as a grantee. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge how much that relationship has meant to us. The patronicity crowdfunding component has not only expanded our individual giving base and helped us share the importance and scope of our Farmers Feeding Families programming with a much wider audience. The matching grant is a lifeline to our small organization. And as of this morning, we are less than $300 from meeting our $6,000 goal with 23 days left to go in the campaign. So it's coming along great again this year, which is a huge, huge relief. So moving on to the final slide, just kind of looking forward, I work for the Ellington Farmers Market part-time, but I also have a full-time job at another small local nonprofit. And I think a lot of us are experiencing the pressure that is coming from reduced and unstable funding from the federal level. We are seeing the need grow and become more intense. And it is a lot to manage on a day-to-day basis, professionally and personally. But I think that what we are all doing at the local level really matters. We may not be able to fix the whole world, but we keep showing up, we keep building, we keep feeding our people, and we're going to continue to do so. Our mission is helping to build a healthy community. And we hope to see you at the market this summer. Opening day is May 2nd.
Thank you so much, Betty. That was such an incredible presentation. And so it's amazing to hear all the impact that the Ellington Farmers Market has done over the years. Thank you again. All right, we can move into questions now. I see that there are a few in the chat. Let me just grab a few from the chat, and then if you have any questions for Emma or Betty, please just feel free to come off mute and shout them out or drop them in the chat. I'll try and get all of them in the chat. So I see a question from Myra. How many donors are required for the community match fund? This is a great question. The way it works is we have what's called a donor minimum rule. So we require that you have as many donors as your crowdfunding goal divided by 100. So if your crowdfunding goal is our maximum match, which is 6,000, as I mentioned before, you'd have to have at least 60 unique donors. There's no minimum donation. So donations could be $1, they could be $100. So it's scalable depending on your crowdfunding goal. Your crowdfunding goal divided by 100, if that makes sense. Let me see if there are any other questions. Can businesses run projects? This is a great question. We get this one a lot. businesses cannot run projects. So businesses, LLCs, any type of for-profit entities are not eligible to run projects through the community match fund. Yeah. And then another question, what is some advice you can give to people who may be new to crowdfunding or the community match fund as a whole? I'll actually pass this on to Betty and Emma. Emma, if you want to start us off, and then we can move to Betty.
I don't know if Becky, are you still on the call? She's another member of Sustainable Fairfield, and she's actually worked with Sustainable CT even more than I have, I think. So I don't know, Becky, if you have any thoughts for that.
I think
Oh, she
Becky
left?
may have left us.
I mean, I think that I don't know about great advice, but I would just say like utilize Sustainable CT in terms of like, I just feel like every time we have a question and we reach out, they're so willing to come back to us really quickly and like utilize their knowledge. I think it's just really helpful throughout the process. It's having gone through other grant programs, it's just so much easier. And it feels great to be keeping it in Connecticut as well. So I don't know. I guess I don't have any great advice except do it.
Betty.
I will say that as the primary fundraiser for the Ellington Farmers Market and sort of having built up our fundraising program, um, where we really lacked was individual donors. The farmers market is not a natural place for people to think that they should be donating their money. You know, it seems like a business to a lot of people. So it was a hard uh, gap to bridge with individual donors. But Sustainable CT has the Patronicity crowdfunding campaign has been the most effective tool we've been able to use to communicate why we are a nonprofit. Um, and so my advice is, to lean on your networks as heavily as you can, but also keeping in mind that people will make donations. People want to donate. People want to help, right? And for me, reminding folks that donating locally, making your donations to local organizations will ensure that your donations are helping the people that are your neighbors, the people that you live and work nearby. And I think that at least in our community, I think that was a great message for people to hear. Rather than sending money to maybe an international nonprofit, consider even making a small donation. The great thing about the crowdfunding piece is that you can encourage small dollar donations, and for $5, $10, you can help your neighbors in need this year at the farmers market. So that was sort of the track that we took. Also, saying it a lot. Don't just say it one time. So I did a weekly social media campaign. I posted weekly in our email newsletter, and also we did patch articles. So any sort of free or low cost way to get that word out and share that link, you can do. You can text your group text, just to spread the word, and just whatever you can think of to get that word out. And don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you. Super helpful. Yeah, Emma.
I wanted to ask a question actually for Betty. Did you have any other questions that you would, or can I just jump in?
No, go ahead.
Betty, I was curious about your SNAP process. We've been trying to kind of do something in Fairfield, and we've had a lot of roadblocks. So when you have somebody sitting there and they swipe their EBT card, I'm sorry, this is like so technical.
No, not at all.
And you might have said this already. So they swipe their card and then you just give them cash or you give them like a voucher.
Okay, so in order to track what what is going out versus what is coming in, and we do track every dollar. We have different cards for different programs. So they're like business cards essentially that we pay to print, that are for SNAP. We do I think we do $2 increments, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So, and we use blue cards, white cards, to indicate that the dollars are from the person's EBT money, and blue cards to indicate that they're doubled. So we can track both that the SNAP dollars themselves are coming back in, and also how many of the double dollars are coming back in and being spent at the market.
And the person that like is sitting there doing that is a volunteer. You have a volunteer sitting there passing those out every week.
Sometimes it's a volunteer. Another thing that we've done is last year in particular, we applied for a community funds grant through the Greater Hartford Gives Foundation to fund basically a high school intern coming in and working as a subcontractor every week to do that work. Um, and so, but on the back end, the handing out of things is less technical part. It's the bringing back in of things, right? So all of our vendors have bank bags. I print out tally slips and put them in the bank bags each week. They tally up because we have different programs. Each program has a different voucher. So they tally up what has come back in based on the program, the date, the name of their business. They hand that bank bag back at the end of the market. I take them all home. I count them all out. I record them all in our data spreadsheet, and we put money in those bank bags and give them back to the vendors the next week. So yeah, there is a chunk of administration that goes into it for sure. But if you have somebody on staff who doesn't mind that type of thing, it's definitely doable.
Thank you. That definitely answered all my questions.
And also, I'm happy to talk offline as well if you
Yeah,
have more questions. Summer, please feel free to share my email address. And happy to talk anytime.
definitely. Thank you.
Sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. We are unfortunately at time today, but we will be sending up a follow-up email if you have any additional questions for myself or Betty or Emma. We will be sharing their contact information in the follow-up email. And yeah, thank you everyone again for your time today. It's beautiful out here. I hope you have a great rest of your day and take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.